A man spent his entire career protecting his community as a law enforcement officer. He wore a badge. He showed up. He did the job most people wouldn't. Then he retired, thinking the worst was behind him. Then one day, sheriff's deputies showed up at his door, not to welcome him as a fellow officer, but to arrest him. For a meme. On Facebook. And here's the part that should make your blood boil. The sheriff already knew the meme was harmless. He knew. And he had him arrested anyway. Let me tell you about Frank Serpico. After a full career in law enforcement, Frank retired and did what most of us do. He went on Facebook, shared some posts, had some opinions. That's it. That's the whole story of what he did wrong. He posted a meme, a political meme, in a Facebook group, and somehow, that landed him in a jail cell for 37 days. Now, I've covered a lot of cases on this channel where law enforcement overstepped. But this one hits differently. Because this isn't just any citizen whose rights got trampled. This is a retired cop. Someone who spent his career on the inside of this system. And even he wasn't protected from it. If it can happen to Frank Serpico, it can happen to any one of us. Here's what actually happened. Frank posted a meme that some people, and I want to be very specific here, some people claimed made them uncomfortable, not threatened, not in fear for their lives. Uncomfortable. So what did Sheriff Nick Williams do? Did he call Frank and say, "Hey, can you explain this post?" No. Did he look at the meme in context, do 5 minutes of research, and realize it was completely harmless? He could have. He should have. Instead, he sent investigators to Frank's door and obtained an arrest warrant. The meme Frank posted referenced Perry High School and a mass shooting. And yes, on the surface, if you read that with zero context, it sounds alarming. But here is what Sheriff Williams already knew. That meme was not original. It was not created by Frank Serpico. It was already circulating across the internet, and it referred to a real shooting that happened in Perry, Iowa, nearly 2 years earlier, in January of 2024. Frank didn't write it. Frank didn't threaten anyone. Frank shared an existing meme about a tragedy that had already occurred in another state entirely. And the sheriff knew this. In his own words, when pressed directly, Sheriff Williams admitted it. He said, "We knew. The public did not know." Think about that for a second. He knew the meme was referencing Iowa. He knew it was not a threat against Perry County High School. He knew Frank Serpico was not planning any act of violence. And he still sent investigator Jason Morrow to file an arrest warrant affidavit with the court. That affidavit was the problem. That sworn document, submitted under oath to a judge, left out the most important fact in the entire case. It left out that the meme was referencing a shooting in Iowa. It left out that the content was already circulating online before Frank ever shared it. What it included instead was language that made Frank's protected political speech look like a credible threat to commit mass violence at a school. Based on that affidavit, a judge set bail at $2 million. $2 million. For a Facebook meme. And Frank Serpico, a retired law enforcement officer, sat in a jail cell for 37 days because he couldn't get out. This is the part one really need you to pay attention to. This is not a case where law enforcement made an honest mistake. This is not a situation where they didn't have all the information. They had the information. The context was available. The facts were available. And that arrest moved forward anyway. In American law, this matters enormously. When an officer submits an affidavit to obtain an arrest warrant, they are swearing under oath that the information in that document is accurate and complete. The Supreme Court addressed exactly this in Franks v. Delaware, where the court held that if an officer knowingly and intentionally, or with reckless disregard for the truth, includes false statements or critical omissions in a warrant affidavit, and those problems were necessary to establishing probable cause, that warrant is invalid. Invalid warrant. Invalid arrest. Unconstitutional detention. That is not my opinion. That is Supreme Court precedent going back decades. Our personal information is all over the internet, and it is used against us, not just by the government, but by private corporations and by AI, and it is only getting worse. Cases like Frank's are a reminder that your digital footprint can be turned into a weapon against you at any moment. That is why I use Inconi. Inconi removes your personal data from multiple sites, including online directories, people search sites, and commercial databases. The process is fully automated, so it continuously removes your data around the clock. Check out Inconi using the link in the description below for 60% off. They can't come after what they can't find. So Frank did what every American has the right to do when their constitutional rights are violated. He sued. Under 42 U.S.C. 1983, the federal civil rights statute, any person whose rights are violated by a government official can sue for money damages. It is one of the very few tools we the people actually have against government misconduct. And even then, officials can claim qualified immunity to dodge accountability entirely. It is not easy. But Frank Serpico did not back down. The lawsuit was filed by FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, a national nonprofit First Amendment advocacy organization. They took this case because, as their attorney put it, no American should experience the injustice of being jailed for a political meme on Facebook for even 10 minutes, let alone 37 days. They alleged multiple constitutional violations, including Frank's First Amendment right to free speech and his Fourth Amendment right to be free from unlawful arrest. And they went after Sheriff Nick Williams and investigator Jason Morrow directly. The case settled. Frank Serpico received $835,000 in damages. Now the sheriff's office, following the standard legal playbook, denied any wrongdoing as part of the settlement agreement. That is typical. That is almost always what happens in these cases. But let me ask you something. No government entity agrees to write a check for $835,000 if they genuinely believe they did nothing wrong. Insurance companies, county attorneys, elected officials, none of them want to pay out. They fight. They delay. They use every legal tool available to them. When they settle for a significant number, that tells you everything the formal statement won't say out loud. Meanwhile, Frank Serpico lost 37 days of his life behind bars. He lost his post-retirement job. He missed his wedding anniversary. He missed the birth of his grandchild. He lost time he will never get back. How do you put a dollar amount on that? Honestly, you can't. But the legal system requires us to try. And $835,000 reflects just how serious and how outrageous this violation was. Here is where I get frustrated. Sheriff Nick Williams, to this day, maintains he did nothing wrong. He points fingers at the judicial system. He points fingers at Frank's defense attorney. He says the sheriff's office had nothing to do with the $2 million bail or the 37 days in jail. That falls solely on the judicial system and the defendant's attorney. But wait, why was there a $2 million bail set in the first place? Because of the arrest warrant affidavit his office submitted. That document, filled with misleading framing and critical omissions, is what put Frank behind bars. The bail was a consequence of the arrest. The arrest was a consequence of that affidavit. That affidavit came from the sheriff's office. You do not get to light the match and then blame the fire department. And now this same sheriff is running for re-election in Perry County, Tennessee. He is standing in front of his constituents, telling them he did nothing wrong, while taxpayers in that county just funded an $835,000 settlement because of exactly what he did. In 2026, we have a word for that: gaslighting. Here is the hard truth about civil rights cases in America. We the people have very limited remedies when government officials violate our rights. We can sue for money damages under federal law. That is essentially it. We can hope that prosecutors pursue criminal charges against the officials responsible, but we have no control over that. We can hope they get fired or disciplined, but we have no control over that either. A settlement like this one is, in many ways, the best possible outcome available to an ordinary citizen. And it is still only a partial victory, because Frank Serpico still spent those 37 days in that jail cell. That time is gone forever. And Sheriff Nick Williams still gets to deny everything publicly and ask for your vote. The only real check left is you, the voter, the constituent, the neighbor. If you know people in Perry County, Tennessee, Make sure they know this story. Make sure they know what this sheriff did, what it cost, and what he is saying about it now. Because those who do not learn from their mistakes are doomed to repeat them. Subscribe if you want to keep following cases like this. And remember, our rights do not end where your fear begins. Freedom is scary. Deal with it.